Isaiah 29 operates as a multi-layered prophetic template. It identifies a specific sequence: the physical destruction of a city, the intentional preservation of ancient records, and a targeted ecological and spiritual recovery. The chapter begins in verse 1 with a direct warning: "Woe to Ariel, the city where David dwelt." The term Ariel translates to the Lion of God, or the hearth of the altar. In this context, Ariel is Jerusalem. In verse 2, the Lord declares he will distress Ariel, bringing heaviness and sorrow. The text describes God transforming the physical city itself into an altar of judgment. Verse 3 specifies the method: "I will camp against thee round about, and will lay siege against thee." This military siege occurred across three distinct historical events: first by the Assyrians in 701 BC, then the Babylonians in 586 BC, and finally the Romans in 70 AD. The literal physical leveling of this city establishes the baseline for everything that follows. By grounding the prophecy in concrete military history, the text sets a standard for how the subsequent, more symbolic verses are to be interpreted. Verse 4 details the aftermath. "The city is brought down, and its speech shall whisper out of the dust." This describes a destroyed civilization's records eventually being pulled from the earth. The prophet Nephi mirrors this language in 2 Nephi chapter 26, verses 15 and 16, stating that those who are destroyed shall speak unto them out of the ground. Nephi adopts Isaiah 29 as a scriptural type. He uses it to prophesy the destruction of his own people in the Americas and the future recovery of their buried records from the soil. Verses 5 through 8 outline the fate of the attackers. The terrible ones are blown away as chaff. The armies attacking Mount Zion vanish like a hungry man waking from a dream, a pattern fulfilled anciently and projected for the last days. The physical collapse of these civilizations is not the end of their story. Their historical witness is intentionally preserved in the ground to serve as a testimony for future generations. Verses 9 and 10 diagnose the spiritual condition of the people during this period. The Lord pours out the spirit of deep sleep. Their prophets and seers are covered, rendering the population unable to perceive spiritual reality. Because of this blindness, verses 11 and 12 explain that the vision becomes as the words of a book that is sealed. This text is delivered first to the learned, and then to the unlearned, representing the physical emergence of ancient records. 2 Nephi chapter 27, verses 15 through 19, records the fulfillment of this event. The sealed book is presented to the learned, who say they cannot read it, and it is subsequently handed to the unlearned. This flowchart illustrates how these types map to the mechanics of the Book of Mormon's translation. It functions as a divine mechanism designed to bypass human wisdom. The text is rejected by the learned and flows to a node representing the unlearned. The sealing of the book operates as a deliberate structural failsafe. It is designed to bypass intellectual pride and ensure the recovery of these covenants relies entirely on divine intervention. Verse 13 identifies the root of the problem. The people draw near to God with their mouths, but remove their hearts. This hypocrisy surfaces in 735 BC, in 590 BC, during Christ's ministry, and in the latter days. In response, verse 14 states the Lord will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder. This concept has two distinct applications. To ancient Israel, the marvelous work was the sudden destruction of their nation. To a modern audience, it signifies the gathering of Israel and the restoration of long-lost covenants. Verses 15 and 16 pronounce a woe upon those who hide their counsel in the dark, claiming no one sees them, and treating the Creator like potter's clay. The text concludes that human political scheming is ineffective. God takes the hidden works of men and turns them upside down to fulfill his long-term objectives for the restoration. Verse 17 asks, "Is it not yet a very little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field?" The return of the covenant people correlates directly with the return of agricultural fertility to the land. The physical fertility of this specific region serves as a chronological marker for the emergence of the sealed book. In accordance with this timeline, verse 18 declares, "And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book." These unsealed records, specifically the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Book of Mormon, function as the literal mechanism that addresses the spiritual blindness described earlier. The ecological recovery of the land and the unearthing of physical texts occur within the same narrow window. These two events act as dual markers, confirming that the internal timeline of the prophecy has reached its final stage. Verses 19 through 21 describe the resolution. The meek increase their joy, while the scorner is cut off. The legal traps laid to catch prophets at the city gates are rendered powerless. Verses 22 through 24 summarize the redemption of the house of Israel, stating that Jacob shall not now be ashamed, neither shall his face now wax pale. This is realized in the modern era with the physical gathering and formal restoration of the house of Jacob to their lands. The chapter reaches its resolution in verse 24. Those who erred in spirit come to understanding, and those who murmured learn doctrine. A prophecy that began with a devastating military siege concludes with a comprehensive shift in understanding. It links the survival of ancient records directly to the physical return of a people and the resolution of their spiritual errors.